Welcome back to the EU Challenger Series. It's just about time to head into our second match of today between Team Dignitas and Mouse. Both of these teams had weak starts to the split, now tied 0-2 at the bottom of the table. Team Dignitas were expected to be one of the stronger teams, but fell at the first hurdle, losing to Lowland Lions in week 1. So, on the flip side, Mouse, formerly N Faculty, lost once again to their rivals Reason Gaming, making them now 0-5 since expansion. That being said, they certainly looked a lot better, but not good enough. And with everyone improving around them stress, will they lose the arms race?
And the arms race that is the standings right now is in a bit of escalation because, as we said, 40% after today of the games will be completed, and both teams 0-2 at this current point in time. So they had tough losses last week, and you need to get a win this week. And if you don't, as we mentioned earlier, free-falling throughout the standings, it's going to be tough to fight to get into that playoff bracket.
Yeah, really, really hard. But let's take a look at Dignitas' lineup. Team Dignitas EU coming in here with Wonderwear in the top lane, Broken Shard in the jungle, Senkux in the mid lane, and then Crazy Caps and Zaitan as the bottom lane AD carry and support.
And one of the things about Team Dignitas, is their European lineup here, is they actually have really good solo laners when you look at it. When you look at them kind of just under a magnifying glass, they're so good that they seem to always do well in lane. They have the ability to carry games, but just as a unit, they don't seem to be able to have that killer instinct to shut out games, or at least we haven't seen it yet on this lineup. Obviously, we saw a little bit in the qualifiers, but they're not consistently bringing it forward, so we need to see them close out games when they get ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this before, Stress. It's like you can make a highlight clip from like all of those players and the insane plays they make, but it never just comes together. It's all of those just split apart aspects of the team. But under their new name, their opponents, Mouse, we'll see how they can do in this game. And let's take a look at their lineup. Zazza in the top lane, Robin, that newer jungler, into the jungle, Soz Pure Effect in the mid lane, and then Cedrin as AD carry, and then that long time support of his, Mountain.
Yeah, and with a new jungle to the lineup, or jungler to the lineup, we were kind of wondering what would happen with N Faculty. Unfortunately, old habits of the team crept back into their play, and they became passive. After, starting off really strong, they kind of just filtered off and didn't have a lot of impact. The question is, will that fresh lick of paint that is the Mouse banner rejuvenate the roster?
Yeah, absolutely, Stress. And yeah, that is the question for that team. So before we get into game, we want to compare the junglers between these two guys. So Broken Shard and Robin both had significant impacts on the early game, but not always in a positive way. Because Broken Shard historically has had constant aggression and has often put Dignitas behind before the 5-minute mark on multiple occasions. And that's been a huge problem for Dignitas week after week, and even in the qualifiers, and we need to see if they can rectify that. On the flip side, in contrast, Robin has had similar levels of aggression, but it almost always paid off. But that's from a smaller sample size of games.
Yeah, maybe to kind of take a little bit of the heat off there. As, Broken Shard's aggression is a double-edged sword. We've seen it get his laners so far ahead that they, win a game from just the solo carry in a lane, which is great, but we've also seen it kind of backfire a little bit. And playing with that kind of 50-50 perhaps sometimes is difficult to predict. But Broken Shard, one thing you can always say about his play is he is getting into the games, he is aggressive, and is always putting up better, high stat lines. So from 2 games we saw a little bit earlier on screen, at 13 and 26. 26 assists on a jungler is exactly what you want, especially when you're setting up the rest of the team. On the other side, from the 2 games last week, Robin only went 6, 8, and 8. So he had a good impact early on, but then stopped having the impact. So it's 2 similar but different junglers, if you see what I mean. Early game, one seems to be able to hold it a little bit better.
Yes, that was the TLDR. But anyway, these 2 rosters did clash yesterday, so let's watch how it all went down. And this was a bit of an interesting one. So Zazas immediately was under pressure in the top lane here. Broken Shard actually went for a gank before this. It didn't pay off. And he goes in for the second time and does manage to make sure that happens. He actually goes around the side, making sure there's no way for him to get away. And that melee minion can't do anything.
Yeah, can't do anything, and neither can Mountain and Cedric in here. Wonderwear, with that extra kill under his belt, goes bottom lane. 1 hit from the ultimate is enough to pick 1 up, and then they pick up another for Crazy Caps at this point, and honestly, it looks so good.
Yeah, and Dignitas opened up the game so incredibly strong, and take a look at this fight. Mouse was so close to winning it. Take a look at Robin here. He lands the kick onto 3, lands the Zazas ult onto 3 people as well, but Team Dignitas, they're so good at juggling that damage. You even saw him pull away Zaitan at the end.
And Mouse just always seemed to be ahead in team fights up until they lost the team fights, because you could see them saving with Kalista ult down in the bottom lane on the Dignitas side of things, but in comes Senkux from the top, flash ult from Cassiopeia, just lays down so much damage, picks himself up a triple.
Disgusting. And moves on to Zaz's as well. Look at those twin fangs and makes it the triple, as you mentioned, Stress. Really well played. And this was kind of a split up one. You see Dignitas zoning with 3 members, and then Crazy Caps and Broken Shard actually going on the Baron themselves, and they zone valiantly. Yes, they get the shutdown and kill onto Wonderwear, but you see Crazy Caps with all these Ren stacks, 1,500 damage, snap, crunches onto the Baron. They pick up that one, and they proceed to wipe up the mess.
Yeah, and at this point, you can look at the stat lines to see just how far the Team Dignitas carries were 5-1 and 11, 6-2 and 3, 6-1 and 7. Great KDAs here, and just too strong. Nothing that Mouse could do at this point to stop the onslaught of the Team Dignitas Europe lineup, and that was what we were expecting coming into Game 1. They didn't show us it against Lowland Lions. That was a lot better.
They got ahead, they stayed ahead. And Crazy Caps in here, you can see his KDA, 16 KDA from that game alone, 115 CS. He did super well by himself.
He did. On the contrast to that, a player that had a tougher time yesterday, Zazas up in that top lane, 0.6 KDA. He got camped a little bit in the early game and just fell behind in that lane matchup, could never catch up.
Also want to highlight Senkux as well. He's performed in every single game we've had so far, even in the games he loses. 5 KDA right there, and just did so well in that game.
Yes, indeed. He did so well in that game. But, you know, at this point, one thing that we look at today coming into picks and bans is what's going to be available that wasn't yesterday, what's going to be banned away. We saw the Aurelia, the Cassiopeia doing a lot of work yesterday for Team Dignitas. Are they going to be available? That is something that we have to see. How do N Faculty, or now Mouse, if you'll excuse me being stuck in last week.
Hey, we've had a lot of changes to name Stress. I think you can be forgiven on that one.
I hope so. But, you know, at Mouse, I was stuck thinking of Forgiven for a second there. Woo, that was... man. Well, Team Dignitas, how are they going to come into that one?
Yeah, that is the main question as we head into Champion Select Stress. Hey, we got there in the end.
I was desperately trying not to make a by far joke. I'm sorry. As soon as you said Forgiven, I was like, I have to say those words. I have to say them.
It's like brainwashing, you know, from EULCS. But anyway, first ban champion comes out. We're actually aiming towards the junglers this time around. Broken Shard's like, I don't want Robin to have anything in the early game. Let's take away his Jarvan.
Yeah, and you know, we didn't actually see that. I'm looking at yesterday. Oh, so an important thing to note from yesterday's pick and ban phase. The Mouse lineup were late and had no bans in yesterday's game. So they didn't actually show us too much of their ban strategy. On the other side, Team Dignitas, they banned the Jarvan, they also banned Lissandra and the Cassidin. So we're on track for a similar setup here from Team Dignitas.
Yeah, indeed. There's a Cassiopeia as well on top of that, Kalista and also the Cassidin. So we saw those banned last game. We'll be seeing the Cassiopeia taken away from Senkux. We don't want you to make any more plays, but remember his Azir as well. We've seen his Ari. Yeah. He's got a lot, and it's just prioritizing which you hate more from him.
that is very true. However, his lane counterpart, Sauce Perfect, we've seen him play Ari. We know he likes to play aggressive. This time, maybe they'll be a little bit less available in that mid lane. We already see the Cassiopeia ban. Anything else? What have we got available? We've had jungle bans.
Janna takes away as well from Dignitas.
Couple of flex picks as well taken away with the Cassidin being banned. So maybe we'll see some top lane or jungle focus here. I wonder whether they're going to reduce what Broken Shard can play here as well, because we know there are specifically tiers of junglers that you know each player will default to, and it will be a jungle.
Okay, so they do take away another pick from Broken Shard, and also means they took away their own Jarvan. So I wonder if that was being like, okay, we don't want you to take the Jarvan anymore, and we'll also take that one away from the Robin. But anyway, first pick was the Lissandra coming in from Team Dignitas, and doesn't show a lot of their hand already. That's a flex pick. Could go top, could go mid lane. Didn't show a whole lot.
Yeah, it's a bit of a change up from yesterday, where we saw obviously Team Dignitas on the red side didn't want to give the flex pick over to Mouse, but we know that Wonderwear, Senkux can both play this, so it's a pretty straightforward pickup, and you know, pretty fast lock-ins on the other side as Robin takes that Rek'Sai for himself. We saw him on 2 games already last week on Rek'Sai, doing a decent job.
Yeah, and he'll be trying to replicate some of that success. Of course, they bring in the Morgana as well, which is, again, another flex pick. Could be in multiple different positions. On the opposing side, interesting hover from Broken Shard. But more importantly, they lock in the Graves, which, again, we spoke about in the last Champions Select. Huge priority for the European AD carries. Yeah,
so we are still waiting to confirm that is. Yes, there it does get locked in as well. So, yeah, you touched about Morgana being a bit of a flex pick. Interesting to pick Thresh with the possibility of Morgana support.
Yeah.
Morgana support kind of nullifies a lot of Thresh's presence in lane. Once you get that black shield, you just put it on the target. Yes, Thresh still has a lot of other utility, but it's just one of those weird things. Have to see what top laner Team Dignitas are going to pick, and I actually think that is a potential that Mouse might hold off on.
Yeah.
Their solo laner is likely to be the last pick, or one of the two, just to see whether they want Morgana in the top lane role or support, because we've seen that from LCS teams. They'll pick a Morgana very early on and sit on it and say, okay, what do we feel like?
Yeah. Now what do we want to do?
How does the rest of the picks and bans play out for this?
Yeah, really, really smart, and just gives them a lot of maneuverability in Champion Select, so they can do whatever they want to do, depending on their opponent's picks, that being from Dignitas in this game so far. And they do sit on these 2 picks, and yeah, they are looking towards the Zed right now, along with the Sivir. So again, saw that last game, a fast swap up at the very end to Jinx. So we will have the Zed coming in from Soz Pure Effect. So again, he's sitting on champions that he is very confident on, and then the Jinx for Cedrian.
Yeah, and this has a bit of a makings of a team comp that's going to scale very well. You look at a Jinx, she scales well. Rek'Sai still has a lot of impact in the later game, has a lot of control. Morgana is very good. And, one thing that Team Dignitas are going to struggle with a lot is pushing into this composition from Mouse. Zed's going to want to split push. Jinx and Morgana can clear waves exceptionally fast. And there's going to be this time where Soz Pure Effect, if he is the one taking Zed, which obviously why wouldn't he be? He'll be out in a side lane just pushing you down. And you've got to find something to answer back with.
Yeah, so Team Dignitas do answer back with the Ezreal now coming in here as well. So maybe taking a page out of Faker's book from LCK, and also with the Nidalee again. So obviously Broken Shard and a lot of these challenger junglers still prioritize that Nidalee and see her as a strong pick in 5.3. But yeah, Ezreal, so they're looking for that double AD composition. Really nice to see in challenger.
Yeah, and this is going to give them quite a significantly strong mid-game period where they can really fight people around the map. Yes, they'll struggle a little bit with Nidalee, but the amount of siege potential that's going to come out from this Team Dignitas lineup is difficult to deal with. And then looking down the lineup, what would they go for here for Mouse? Do they pick a support? Do they put Morgana down? I mean, they need somebody that can potentially sit in a solo lane and be okay against the push. Something from a top laner, maybe like an Aurelia, to go up against the Lissandra. Yeah. Just something that is okay in lane, can sit around and has a lot of impact against 2 fairly squishy carries as well. You look at an Ezreal and a Graves, that's a lot of squishy targets for that kind of thing. Other champions that may fit into that top lane role, Nara is still available as well. Depends whether they want Morgana support. Yeah,
it really just depends on this last one, and they've been swapping around through those supports, and they may even just bring a support in and throw the Morgana up there.
Minute.
It will be the Aurelia. So you called it stress, and they're just going to be putting that in the top lane and trying to put that up against the Lissandra, so we'll have an okay matchup up there. And all of the picks have slotted into places. That's a lot of swap-ups from Team Dignitas EU coming in, and just depends who's going to be taking those picks right here. But yeah, very interesting. So we have the double AD composition coming in from Team Dignitas EU, of course putting the Ezreal mid lane. As we've mentioned, we've seen this in LCK as well, and a couple of different teams all around the world just trying their hands at it, but it's a very different type of composition.
Yeah, it's not exactly the super standard composition that we'd expect, and honestly that brings with it its own issues. Is how do you play a different style?
Yeah.
How do you adjust everything that you've practiced or learned, or obviously this has been practiced, but how do you go from just basic 5v5 League of Legends to, hey, we're going to play something completely different?
Yeah.
But that's something we're going to have to answer as we go into game. And another thing we're going to have to answer is how really our Team Dignitas going to be able to cope with this multiple threat lineup here from Mouse.
Yeah, this will be very interesting to see how they deal with that one, because yeah, as you mentioned, they have this different composition coming up here, and we have the Rek'Sai, and I've already blanked the picks because
so we had Rek'Sai on the side of Mouse, along with the Aurelia top lane,
yes,
Zed
Aurelia
in the mid lane,
Lissandra, yeah,
with Jinx and Morgana.
Yeah, so you have the Zed, you've got the Aurelia, and you just jump on the dude, they die, and then Jinx gets excited, and then everyone else dies. That's the idea. So it's just can they actually do that against an Ezreal who may even zone them away with an Iceborne Gauntlet? And then you have the Thresh as well. Box comes down and people just run into it, and yeah, there's lots of variables for sure in this game.
So many variables, and I mean, we saw a plan go away from how perhaps they were expecting it to in the last game from Lowland Lions with that Wukong top. They wanted to team fight, never got there to team fight. So Team Dignitas want to siege, they've got to get to Siege. That's one of the biggest problems they've got here. And, Mouse have very good wave clear. I already mentioned that again, but even with their last couple of pickups, Irelia, the Transcendent Blades can clear waves out pretty easily. So Team Dignitas need to get a fair old lead here.
Yeah, and also the matchup we were looking at, of course, between these two teams was the junglers, and we saw how they did before in yesterday's game. And Broken Shard was a lot more consistent than he was in previous weeks. In fact, he didn't go over-aggressive, and he only just went for the calculated plays instead of being like, I think we can get him, let's go. And then like the rest of the team being like, I don't like that, I'm just going to sit here. And then he would just go and by himself and die. So in the last game, he did really well and actually managed to just make those calculated plays. And Robin, from previous weeks, has, in contrast, looked very good, but he needs to step up. And on Rek'Sai again, that was the champion which he did it against Zayu last time around, so maybe he can go in and deal some damage to Broken Shard in the early game.
Yeah, it was. And just to give you guys a bit of an update, we are just waiting to get onto the game. A couple of players are, we're just trying to get them connected in, so that's why you're unfortunately
stuck with us for a little bit
longer.
Stuck with
us for a couple of minutes, but hopefully it shouldn't take too long to get us into game. But you spoke about Broken Shard and Robin. That Rek'Sai Nidalee matchup is one that we saw a fair amount in LCS, but now, of course, it's changed. Now it's on 5.3. We spoke about this a little bit with the Nidalee in the first game. The fix came through for her cooldowns that weren't quite behaving properly, and it reduced her level on kind of a jungle tier list a little bit, but obviously you can see that Broken Shard still thinks it's a worthwhile pick. I wonder how much it can trade against Robin on Rek'Sai in the early game, because that's a lot of where the power of Nidalee got taken away, is those early game combos where you can just use all of your cooldowns and get a massive amount of damage out.
Right, like that was the strength of Nidalee, was getting ahead early game and then snowballing with it. We saw a bunch of builds which just prioritized AP and that would snowball through in the game. So Diamondprox even build, Rod of Ages onto that jungle Nidalee as well. Seen lots of different types of builds, or even just tank to try and do more stuff in team fights. So yeah, there's lots of different things that he can do with that pick. And then of course the Ezreal in the mid lane here, that will be facing down Zed. So yeah, you're going to have the range from the Ezreal. He'll be able to poke a little bit, but that's not a match. That's an interesting matchup actually coming into this.
Yeah, it is a really interesting matchup, and it's a different one for Senkux as well. We've seen his Cassiopeia, somebody that can, bully around quite a lot in lane. Zed's going to be able to sit fairly safe-ish when farming minions through, is going to be able to push out with his Q. However, once Ezreal reaches 6, it's going to get more difficult for Zed to actually roam out on the map. Because you use True Shot Barrage straight through the lane on cooldown every time, and just constantly push that mid wave through. Zed then can't roam out of his lane, because Ezreal pushes him to tower, and of course you're AD. So you can just put so much damage down onto the tower, and Zed loses a tower as soon as he roams. So that is something that Soz Purefect is going to have to deal with and figure out a way to overcome.
Yeah, and we'll see if he can overcome that mountain, because as we head into this game, Team Dignitas were of course sitting 0-2 as they lost their initial week against Lowland Lions, and now their opponents as well, they also lost their first week going 0-2. So, as you mentioned before, these two teams will be, if they lose another game, they'll just be in freefall. 0-4 at this stage in the tournament. If you think about it, next week will be 60% of the way into the split. And that's more than halfway already. And then if you're already 0-4, like how do you recover? How do you get into playoffs? Because it's so important to get those spots.
And Team Dignitas can breathe a tiny sigh of relief with the fact they won yesterday.
Right.
The smallest sigh.
At least they can have one win from this.
They can't be 0-4 at the end of this week, which I think, will be a little bit of a settling thought to them. But still, it's an important game for them. They cannot overlook, in fact, Mouse. Man,
it's going to get us a couple more times before this game ends. But
I mean,
we'll get it out of our system.
That's the thing, is we did so much work with them as N faculty.
Yes.
Now they're Mouse. They're Mouse as of this week.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just reminding myself.
Delete those bridges in my brain. Now Mouse never existed. Okay, so got it. But yeah, absolutely. Because if they take a 5th or 6th spot in after the round robin, they actually drop down and then have to face all the other challenger teams to re-qualify for summer challenger series. So it's really important to snag that 4th spot, or at least get into playoffs. Because then 4th spot means that you have a guaranteed place, but it also means that you don't progress and have a chance of getting into LCS. So you just kind of stay where you are.
Yeah, I mean, you're not in a situation where you're like, sweet, I got fourth. Because, you know, it's just like, okay, well, we got to do better next season. But again, another quick update for you guys. Soz Perfect is having a little bit of difficulty getting into the game, trying to connect. But hopefully it won't be too long. Hopefully it should be just a couple of minutes. But Soz Perfect, as a player, is one that, if he gets into game, has kind of had his ups and downs a little bit, because he's a name that goes around the challenger scene for a fair while now, and everybody's talked about how good Soz Perfect is, about how much he can make plays from the middle lane. We see that in some games, and then other games it's just kind of he goes up against a player that just kind of bullies him around a lot, and then doesn't show those flashes of brilliance. So maybe on Zed, we saw Iker kind of changing his playstyle up to play Zed. Maybe Soz Perfect will do the same here, because we know he's comfortable on Zed. Yeah,
we do. I mean, that's one of his bread and butter champions, right? We've seen him go from team to team and always carry that kind of playstyle. So, yeah, I absolutely agree. And, you know, as we were talking about before, I was talking to CosQ extensively about his mid lane matchups and how he feels about a lot of the different players. And he said that Soz Perfect, he feels, is on a very similar level to him, especially how he feels like they both play. So obviously we did see him in game 1 be very aggressive. The second game didn't do so well against Iker, who had changed his own playstyle up a little bit. So Soz Perfect, if he can replicate how good CosQ was in not only game 1, but also the games last week as well, we could see some good plays from that guy.
Yeah, indeed. And, you know, one lane or one matchup we haven't really spoken about too much at all on this is the bottom lane. And honestly, that's where a lot has come out from this for both of these teams. We talked about how Cedric and Mountain just have had good performances together, been together in that bottom lane for a long time. Crazy Caps and Zaiton on the other hand. Crazy Caps, I feel a lot like Senkux, has been doing very well in the Dignitas games, but it's never really taken them in last week's games to the victory. However, how will it fare in this game? They're playing the Graves, which is, you know, stronger earlier than Jinx is. So if they can get ahead, hopefully that should be a good sign for them.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big story for these guys. You know, like they're always typically good. The amount of times we've seen Crazy Caps just like run away and do amazing plays. We saw that play last week where he was under turret, managed to kill 3 people on Jinx and have like 100 HP left. Like they're all mechanically insane, super, super good at playing, but can they actually convert that into a victory? And they did yesterday, but can they carry on doing that? Because so many times we've gotten to that point and they've just kind of fell at the last hurdle. But as another quick update, guys, Soz Perfect is still having a couple issues getting into game, and if they do approach the 10-minute mark, that is the cutoff point, and that means they will have to FF the game. So we're hoping they can get back into game by that point.
I really hope so as well, because that wouldn't be the result that we'd want. So I really hope that they get him into the game fairly quickly. But, you know, I want to touch again on Crazy Caps as a player, because he's a player that, you know, has been around the scene. He was on that replacement Lemon Dogs roster that was nearly got into LCS. That's a long while back. So Crazy Caps has got a lot of history, but I was reading an interview that they actually did on with the team for Team Dignitas, and you know, Crazy Caps was saying that he kind of lost a lot of the motivation at the beginning of last season. Found it again, and he's now found himself back on another team that's looking to make it into LCS. So I'm glad to see that a player that has history is still coming back to the scene, and you know what, this Challenger series, the league format here allows a player like that to do, which is find a groove and then kind of ride that groove up into a playoff bracket to go into the LCS potentially.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of players, you know, who have kind of been like around teams for a long time, like bouncing from team to team. I remember a player called Glucose. Remember, he used to be on like all the teams we used to see back when we were casting the EUS Challenger Series. Kickus as well, who you now know in Unicorns of Love. I think a crazy stat last year was he was in 21 different teams in 21 months.
Yeah.
So he was in a bunch of different teams, never really found the right one. I think he has now.
Yeah, I think so.
Sitting at LCS, doing really well as Unicorns of Love, only at near the top of the table of EU LCS, not too bad. But it's nice to see the players actually find the right place, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a little longer than... for some players, it takes a little bit longer to find that right place.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that again, with the league format, you get that time to kind of try things out. If you lose one series, it's not the end of the world. But again, with this one, losing a second set of games, that's where it starts
not
to become
good
a
as an
little bit
understatement.
tough. Yeah, exactly. And what's not good is the fact that
they still haven't reconnected.
Still not reconnected.
Because they will have to forfeit if they do hit that 10-minute mark, and that is the the cutoff point. So
I mean, that's
Yeah.
the worst thing is I don't really want to watch this game.
Yeah, me
Especially-
too.
Especially
Yeah.
now that we've done picks and bans as well. I'm interested
Yeah.
to see how Team Dignitas play with a different style.
Yeah, and we do actually, in 2 minutes' time, we will have a definite answer. So it's not like it's just, the end of, we're just going to carry on until the end of time. We do have that time in 2 minutes' time where we will have a definitive answer for you. So
Awesome. Well, at least we'll have that.
yeah, the clock is ticking, Stress.
The clock is. Can we get like a 2 minute no one?
Yeah,
I
on the
feel like
screen,
that's too
right
much
in front of us,
pressure. Yeah, man, that's we don't want to do that kind of thing. But if Mousesports had to forfeit this, they go to 0 and 4,
4, yeah.
and that leaves them with 3 series left. So the potential biggest margin they could have is 6 games to 4,
Yeah.
and that means they have to 2-0 Origin. Lowland Lions, the chuckle already. Origin, Lowland Lions,
They've faced
Gamers 2
and
is
Gamers
the
2.
other
Yeah, Gamers
one
2.
that they have to do. That is
That's a
tough
tall
task.
task,
Those
yeah.
are the 3 teams that are actually competing
Yeah,
for the top half of the table, and that's not exactly an easy task.
Yeah, like the team they should be challenging right now is that Team Dignitas lineup. So if they could pick up a win here, that would put them in really good stead because then they can maybe start challenging those other teams.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Those are the 3 teams right now. I think Lowland Lions have kind of come out of nowhere for a lot of people, but Gamers 2 for sure, and of course, Origin. So they'll be looking to vie for those top couple spots and try and get not only the auto promotion spot, but those other 2 spots, which will allow them to face the LCS teams.
Yeah, indeed. And, not only is it just dropping them out of playoffs, but when you go below the threshold of 4th team and you're in that 5th, 6th spot, you don't even guarantee being in next split of Challenger. You have to play to get back into Challenger. So it's an unforgiving territory to be in when you're down that far in the standings. But, we're going to have to see.
We do have to see. But we do have some good news because they have loaded into the game. So as we do now load into this game, it's been a long time coming, Stress, but remember to tweet your big plays at LOL Esports with the hashtag #ChallengerBigPlays. So if you see anything that really takes your eye, then make sure to tweet it at us and we could read it out later in the show.
Whew, I'm glad that was good news.
Yeah, it was getting to that 2 minute point. My heart was racing. I'm sure the players were as well.
Now I kind of wish we had that clock.
Yeah.
Now we would have seen
it would
how
be like
close
right on the
we
2
got.
seconds and it just gets in time.
It's like one of those films, where it's like cut the red wire.
It's
and-
like, do I cut it? They cut the right
Yeah,
wire.
They cut the right wire. And we're getting into game.
Here we go. And now Team Dignitas EU moving on to the blue side in this matchup. Now 1-0 up against Mouse. This is, of course, 2 best-of-1, so each game counts in its own right. And Mouse really want to try and get this one Soz Pure Effect now into this game. Good times all around.
Good times indeed. So we are in. You can hear things are happening, but that was during the pause.
It's all in
so
the past.
It's all in the past.
Don't worry about it.
Flying through. But opening of this game. It's been a while since we were in picks and bans, so let's run very briefly through the lineups. On the Team Dignitas lineup, Lissandra top, Nidalee, Ezreal in the mid lane, Graves, and Thresh down in the bottom lane.
Yeah, and that means on the opposing side, Irelia now in that lane up against Lissandra, then Robin in the jungle with his Rek'Sai, then Zed in the mid lane, and then Jinx and Morgana as the AD carry and support. And there was some debate whether there was going to be that Morgana in the top lane, but yeah, they eventually put an Irelia there instead.
Yeah, and to recap what the Irelia can do here, she now has a fair amount of squishy targets because you look down this list. Lissandra, yes, does get a bit tanky and has her ultimate, but Nidalee generally wants to build AP as kind of flat without a lot of resistances. Ezreal is squishy. Graves is pretty squishy as well. So in Irelia diving in, if Xaxus can get himself fed, would be very difficult for the Team Dignitas lineup to deal with. However, Xaxus got camped yesterday. Will we see the same early game focus out of Broken Shard and Wonderwear that we saw in Game 1?
Yeah, that's true. He was playing Gnar yesterday, and Broken Shard really just put him down, and Wonderwear could stay on top of him. And now he has this Nidalee, so he'll be trying to do things early game for sure. It just depends if he puts that attention to top lane. And that's the lane with the CC along with bot lane. Not sure how much he can do with Senkooks up against Soz Pure Effect. He'll have the Flash, he'll have the Living Shadow. And at level 6, of course, he'll have the Deathmark as well. So he'll be a slippery Zed to try and get on top of.
He will indeed. And as we said, Senkooks is going to want to shove him in after 6. Again and again, using that true shot barrage. But you can see also Senkooks just in the melee versus ranged matchup here. Soz Pure Effect has to wait for his Q to be available unless the minions push right up to him and Senkooks is far back in lane. So he has to respect Senkooks' damage here in the early game.
So these two bot laners did go for the Gromp and also the Krugs. And Cedric and Mountain here took a little bit more damage than Crazy Caps and Zaitan. In fact, Crazy Caps took a lot of damage himself from those Krugs because he does have that True Grit passive, giving him a little bit more magic resist and armor, so he can more happily tank up some of that damage. But they've already been pushed back. Cedric and Mountain do get the advantage in this lane.
They do. Really interestingly, though, Mountain, after getting level 2, hasn't skilled an ability yet, so he's leaving it very open on how this lane is going to play out. If they're going to play somewhat aggressively, he's going to wait to skill Black Shield and then prevent a hook here. He actually does take the Black Shield after all at level 2. So we are in a situation where they should be pretty easily able to deter a bot lane. And you can see Broken Shard dropping pretty low against Blue Buff. Blue Buff typically has been his friend, though. Yeah.
Swinging a miss on that final spear on the stationary target. Maybe expecting it to move there. Top lane, though, Wonderwear facing Zazas here. We'll have that Lissandra versus the Aurelia matchup. Robin does take a spear in return, but he knows Broken Shard's very low, and also the chance of him ganking is also low at this time as well. So Robin's got that early advantage and early knowledge just in the jungle so far. So he's having a good game. Zazas as well, trying to aggress onto Wonderwear, and he gets a lot of damage so far. Now looking towards Robin again. He did loop all the way around. Now tunnels into that bush. He'll be coming into the right side of this lane. Wonderwear, he does have the flash. The flash right into the burrow. Gets the first blood as well. Wonderwear will use the flash, but Zazas uses his own as well. So 2 flashes for a kill.
That is great reading early on by Robin. Knew that he could get into the bush unwarded. Knew that as soon as he gets in, just has to unburrow. Brilliant, brilliant play to get themselves the first blood. That's what Mouse needed. And a Black Shield down in the bottom lane. Again, just showing that Mouse right now feel like they're in control of these lanes.
Yeah, and Robin, we were interested in the jungle matchup, and so far he's way ahead of Broken Shard. Not only did he poke him back and make sure he went back to his jungle, that being from Broken Shard, Robin was able to get that early game aggression and pick up the first blood only 4 minutes in for his team.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how Rek'Sai's path through the jungle, because the amount of sustain that you get from being burrowed allows you to go through fairly easily and clear your jungle with a fair amount of health to allow you to gank like that. So a very interesting pathing out of Robin in this early game. Really allows him to get a lead here, and Broken Shard's caught a little bit napping here. He needs to get himself back out onto the Rift and get himself into a lane, because Nidalee needs to get kills to get herself through the mid game.
Yeah, that's the early game he's looking for. So Robin has gone back to base, picked up the Stalker's Blade in comparison to Broken Shard's his Trailblazer there. So Robin feeling like he needs the extra bit of help when he goes for those ganks.
Yeah, especially now with his flash down. Can't flash unburrow for a good few minutes. So Stalker's Blade should be enough to help him out here. But bottom lane, ooh, hook very nearly lands. And meanwhile, Broken Shard is on his way down to this bottom lane, but he gets stopped by the crab. Will be seen on the ward as well. And
2 for 2 on missed skill shots on jungle camps.
Great, but you know, as
it's all
we
about
said
hitting
yesterday,
the champions. That's the
but as we said last week, though, you don't throw them, they always miss.
Yeah, you miss every shot you don't take, and that is the name of the game. But Suz Pure Effect in the mid lane, trying to get as many minions as he can. He's slightly behind, but he's got this heading towards him, and Senkux receives a shuriken for pushing a little too far forwards. Robin also, seeing Broken Shard on the bottom side of the river, was now just tearing through his own jungle.
He was indeed, but Robin is heading top again. We'll see whether the same trick plays out twice for this Lissandra here. Robin goes in. This time it's warded. So Wonderwear gets himself out of that. But I want to take another look at this mid lane matchup, because now Zed's got a few levels in his Q. He's actually able to stand up to a lot of the damage that Senkux is going to output. As long as you dodge the Mystic Shot in this lane, Zed, until Ezreal starts shoving in, should be okay. And he's actually hit level 6 before Ezreal. But bottom lane, there's a hook, but no follow-up out of the Team Dignitas bot lane.
Yeah, Crazy Cap saying to Zaitan, I want to recall, and I'm going to commit to my recall. I'm going back. You can have fun hooking people all you like, but I am going to go back and buy an item. He's sitting on 48 farms so far, so we'll see what goes into. Right into a BF sword, but it's all about the top lane. No, Zazas does get hit by that spear. Robin comes in from the bot side as well, and sees him with that Tremor Sense, so he knows exactly where he is. Stalker's Blade, Smite comes out, the Chilling Smite onto Broken Shard as he leaves, but they do not pick up the kills, and they only burn that flash from Broken Shard as well.
And this is completely... Ooh, bot lane, actually.
Yeah, Mountain returns fire with a binding of his own onto Zaitan. That takes him to 20% health, and he'll have to pop a couple health potions to get him healthy again.
This game has completely flipped focus here. Crazy Caps knows he's got an advantage with regards to the items.
Oh, Zaitan again gets hit by the Dark Binding. He flashes aggressively onto Cedric, though, as Crazy Caps can offer the damage. That BF sword advantage.
Here we go.
Will it hit? It goes all the way into the bot lane. And
He gets
snipes him
him
as well. What crazy aim from Senkooks in the mid lane.
Oh my goodness, great ultimate out of Ezreal with that true shot barrage. Picks off Cedric, and that was all started from a great read out of Crazy Caps. He comes into the lane with a BF sword. He knew that Cedric wanted to back away because he was at that 56, 57 minions mark to get a BF sword and pots for himself. But they read it well. Zaitan hit a hook even under pressure, keeps himself alive, and they set up the kill. Great play out of Team Dignitas Europe. That is what they needed to begin this game.
Yeah, and it's all about trying to move that into a bigger advantage, and they know they can get those kills onto those carries, and Wonderware tries to do it again. Moves into the mid lane, comes in with the Frozen Tomb, uses it on himself. Sounds perfect, jumps out of the way of it. He actually flashed away, so he targeted himself.
Yeah, I wonder whether Wonderware actually wanted that to target himself as well, because there are two options. Obviously, Lissandra Ultimate is going to keep you alive. I think they could have got the kill. I think you're right. But at the same time, Wonderware was able to make sure that he kept himself alive in that situation. Don't really think Soz Purefect had quite enough damage to do that. But at this point in the game, what items have been picked up? Tear of the Goddess onto Ezreal very early on. Bilgewater Cutlass as well in that mid lane matchup. And you know, fairly standard early goings from both of these mid laners.
Yeah, indeed. As you mentioned, Bilgewater Cutlass, always that prime item to pick up for Zed in the mid lane. Of course, that will be amplified by his own ultimate, the Death Mark. And there's the Farm Alarm. Robin going straight to his Raptors and onto his red buff, so doing just that.
Yeah, Farm Alarm in action, but Zazas wants to go aggressive in the top lane as well. But you can see Wonderware, now without his ultimate, has to be careful, as Zazas has a fair amount of kill potential, especially now that his ultimate is up and Wonderware's isn't. So Mouse certainly have themselves a decent spot in this game to begin it up.
Yeah, they do indeed. So after that initial flurry of action, it's now 1-1 with the slight advantage to Mouse, which is contrary to what we saw yesterday. Team Dignitas just kind of picking up the advantage from minute one and swinging it through the rest of the game. Zazas, there's the aggression you can see, using his ultimate just to get ahead as well. Those Transcendent Blades doing that damage and also giving him the life back as well. But we did have another pause coming in, and we will get the information to you as soon as possible. But yeah, I want to see the end of this game.
Yeah, I do as well, because this game has completely been blown wide open from that play in the bottom lane. So let's retrack all the way back to the beginning of the game, when we could see Zed was under pressure and Senkooks was having his way in that lane fairly early on. Zed kind of evens it out, but when you're a Zed, you can't stop an Ezreal ulting bottom lane in conjunction with them bursting down Cedric, and Cedric kind of just being in the right spot. So. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot that Soz Purefect could have done about that.
It's like, what do you do?
Just great play out of Team Dignitas.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. I mean, from a Zed, you can death mark him, but he'll just carry on going. Like, you can't stand in the way because it will just go through you. It's not a Caitlyn ult, but yeah, he was just super well predicted. And he also predicted that he'd run back at that exact point and know that he was going to carry on running, because that's not a spot where you were going to recall. So he knew that he'd be running through that place as they pushed him back. It was just...
I feel like we need to call him Professor Kobe and calculate the distance.
What the wind speed was.
Hey, that's something I didn't have to take account of on LCS. But that was a really nice play to start off. But even before that, the play top lane, where we saw the gank out of Robin, knowing the jungle path thing, getting Zazas ahead, and we said in Champion Select that if Zazas gets ahead, there are a lot of squishy targets that are very easy for him to pick off. And that is exactly what has happened in this game so far. You can see Zazas, or I can see Zazas is up in CS. Hopefully, we will be back up into game fairly shortly. He's 79 CS right now, has a Phage up against the Catalyst on Lissandra. So he has himself a comfortable lane and actually is in a good spot.
Yeah, he is in a good spot, but we have some very unfortunate news, guys, because unfortunately Soz Purefect disconnected again, and then just kind of didn't reconnect for a while, and they've now used up all of their time. So unfortunately, Mouse have to forfeit the game, and Team Dignitas will just take this one. So they're now 2-2, and Mouse come out of the second week 0-4. It's kind of unfortunate how that happened. I wanted to see the rest of the game, but unfortunately, they used up all their time.
I know, and we're at a situation where there's no clear winner.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is really frustrating, actually, because we saw flashes from both teams of exactly what they wanted to do.
Exactly, and we just need to take that and see what they do in the following weeks. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do from our end, as the rules are the rules. So unfortunately, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, being able to, or not being able to field the full roster does mean that we're in that bit of a tough situation, but unfortunately, that is how it has to be.
Yeah, indeed. So anyway, we have to take a quick break, but when we get back, we will be heading into our very last game of the day. It's a little bit faster than we may have hoped, but we'll be coming back into this one very soon. Don't go anywhere.